the vibe coming back, everyone coming from Bitcoin Vegas to Consensus in Miami, back here to Washington, D.C., back with another Off the Record on the Rocks with my good friend, Mr. Ankarino. We've got lots to get to, things we haven't covered in the past few weeks. Everything from our boy Zuckerberg rolling out stablecoin payments after 4 years of being real quiet and Libra just fading into the background. They're now also talking about USDC creator payouts. So on-chain economy coming to Facebook. Meanwhile, we've got the GameStop eBay real-world negotiation, although it looks like that deal has started to fall through. War.gov just talking about all the AIs, and every senior executive who was in the rotunda is now on their way to China with President Trump to meet with Xi Jinping. It is going to be a very busy week. That vibe coming back from Consensus Miami, and then two big things happening right now this week in Washington, which is number one, the new Fed chair, Warsh. The vote actually happening earlier this afternoon. I think the final confirmation will happen by Friday, the 15th, I believe, is the final
right on
deadline.
schedule, mid-May.
Right on schedule. And in the same week, within what will end up being within a 48-hour window, the Clarity Act going to the Senate for final markup after what seems like years of negotiations between the banking lobby and the crypto elite. That seems to be coming to fruition just as Warsh is going to step in. And we just said Facebook's ready to roll out the creator economy on chain. Seems like the Fed's ready to pivot into blockchain, crypto, maybe even a Bitcoin strategic reserve. Haven't heard that one in a while.
I have not heard that one in a while, but let me peel that one. Just a quick question for you on that, because if Zuckerberg is quietly, which means he's been working hard, and means he's been listening to our podcast, because we always say if you're not in the news, you're the one doing the real work. He pops up talking about stablecoin payments in advance of the Clarity Act, which kind of sort of leads me to think there's a group of people who have a little inside track on that. And was that even brought up in any of the conference environments, the panels, the cocktail parties? Like, what was the vibe on that?
That's the vibe right there, which is that, I mean, you can just watch the news cycle. I mean, we've been covering it here from Western Union, from Mastercard partnering with Hedera and agents getting credit cards. Like, the on-chain economy is happening. The tokenization of deposits is happening despite the lack of clarity with this. It almost seems like, I think this China trip was supposed to happen 4 weeks ago. The narrative got pushed back into mid-May. And when that China trip gets pushed back and all the regulation had to get pushed back, but all these other plans, all these other press releases from Zuckerberg and Mastercard and Hedera and Coinbase and everyone else, they just had to keep going. By the way, they had to be at Vegas for the conference. They had to be in Miami at Consensus talking about what they're building, what they're doing, what they're rolling out. And so, yeah, that's been the vibe, which is that anyone entering the stablecoin market right now, if you're doing it with eyes wide open, and likely you've been doing it quietly with compliance and legal teams and maybe even some friends from the administration who have jumped into the corporate world. And you're doing it in such a way that you know what the rules are going to be, and therefore you're prepared. You're ready for it. This is... Meta has re-entered the stablecoin market. This is from Fortune, looking from Jack Kubinik, April 29th. So this is going back a couple of weeks. But the tech giant has quietly rolled out digital currency payouts for select creators in Colombia and the Philippines. The payouts are available on the Solana and Polygon blockchains and use the stablecoin USDC.
In Colombia and the Philippines.
Interesting, right?
It harkens back to that photo we saw of places like the rural Philippine farmer who's being shown the Google Chromebook and how he's going to manage his flock via this special new AI-powered thing. I mean, these are the proving grounds, right? This is why it's so interesting. And what this to me signals, and we've been talking about this for years because we thought that the fits and the starts have been palpable, right? That the NFT craze and boom, the non-fungible token from acquiring these sometimes JPEGs, sometimes music files, sometimes videos like on Top Shot for the NBA, and I get to own it, and I get to have it, and I get to create it, and then the original creator gets maybe some cut of the original creation if you create a derivative, et cetera, et cetera. Well, that never really came to fruition. But now this, I mean, if Meta is going to say we're rolling it out, that is scale first and foremost. And it is going to be the dawn. My favorite 3-letter acronym, my favorite TLA is UGC, the dawn of the user-generated content era. Because user-generated content, let's just call it, I mean, if I ask my kids what it is, let's say it's memes. Well, imagine now if you can be Chef Memes and cook up the dream for the A team in the stream, and then you get paid, Well, now it's real. Now it's real because without that currency behind it, hey, anybody could have created it. Without the
Yeah.
provenance, anyone could take credit. So this is really fascinating. I think you tie money to it, then you tie ownership to it. That's really that's a cool thing.
That's the piece of it. I think that, this is, I'm still reading here, but this is Meta follows the giant failed attempt to launch its own stablecoin through a project which was called Libra, later rebranded Diem, which the company abandoned in 2022 after opposition from lawmakers and Congress, right?
Yeah, Gary Gensler rolled in and went nuts on them.
Yes, you guys are trying to be a bank, Zuckerberg.
You're trying to be a bank.
You can't be a bank, but now you're a bank, you're a bank, you're a bank. And he's saying, no, I'm not a bank. We're just supporting the creator economy with ownership, right? That's where that access now is going to start to make sense. People will start to see that what you create on Facebook, and again, this is where I talked about Threads and Mastodon and all of these Blue Sky and all these other channels where you're going to own the network of your friends. You're going to own the connections that you have. Now, the algorithm, that's still theirs. The ability to cycle your content through the millions of users to get those eyeballs so that you can get paid, you will still be reliant on the algorithm unless there's some change there in terms of how the users could own the network as a decentralized algorithm, right? And that's where I think agents and pay to play, if you're advertising on your content, maybe you're not putting thousands of dollars behind an ad, but you're always putting $1 behind every post. You're contributing to the network. Don't you think you would be rewarded for that? I could see, this is what YouTube has been doing for a long time. This is what, brands have tried to do with direct relationships with influencer programs.
Yeah, but that's exactly where they're missing it, right? I'm seeing now that we're seeing cracks and we're seeing through, because when you say influencer, I just want to stop there for 1 second, because the video output, the influencers on the internet today, whether they're on YouTube or on TikTok or on Instagram or wherever they are influencers because of an output. Now, you might argue that the output is UGC. In fact, I think we did argue the output of an influencer would be considered UGC from some number of years ago. So that's what we would say. Like, they make a video, they own it, and this is what their output is. But the influence itself is their output, right? I mean, this is to take the sort of like the philosophical approach, right? The influence of the person is the output, and therefore is finite in an output perspective. Their growth of influence and power comes from one thing, which is number of subscribers, number of streams. It has nothing to do over time with the original output, right? They can't be separated from one another. The influencer's face and voice and talk is the output, and what they talk about and what they're talking or they're doing and looking like is almost irrelevant, because the influence is measured by streams and follows. So now we're entering a new world which says, okay, wait, let's just blow that up for a second. Blow up the influencer economy. What do you mean? Well, we're quietly rolling out stablecoin payments. We're quietly rolling out ways for you on the Meta network to create content, to create UGC. And the output is the UGC. And you, new content creator in this new model, are going to gain influence not because of who you are, but what you create, which I think turns that model on its head on some level. And because Facebook and Meta are the kings of the niche content domain. If you have half of the world's humans in there, well, then if you need to go look at snowmobiling enthusiasts who happen to like cooking pancakes, who happen to like walking with their dogs, and you create user-generated content that is really targeted to snowmobiling enthusiasts who like pancakes, who like walking their dogs, well, the content is going to be what's king. And we get right back to what every publication on the Web 2.0 used to say was content is king. They never ever said that reporters were king, or they never said that talking heads were king. They just gave the data. But today, or as of this announcement, I feel like there might be just a nice big shakeup and a more democratization of the playing field of saying, hey, influencers, you guys got your influence. That's good. But there's going to be the door's going to blow open and everyone's going to run in. And if people have a really interesting idea for a piece of content, well, now that's going to be influence and no longer pretty faces and large subscription models.
Yeah, I mean, I think in some ways, like, I can go real meta with you here on the show, as sometimes I like to do, but I think we recognized during the pandemic and as this digital economy and the metaverse was getting stood up, that the only way for folks like you and I to earn trust and to gain influence is to be human and talk about it and create content, right? What we are doing now is not scripted. We have thoughts and original thoughts and ideas that we share with each other and then share with the world because we believe there is value in that, in sharing that. And some of that value for us now there's the flip side. If there's two sides to every market, it's that, this proof of humanity, this proof of being a trusted source of news and information. Because if you keep showing up and we keep showing up hundreds of episodes into this with thoughts and opinions and digging through the noise to try to find the signal, well, then our subscribers are paying attention to that. And that puts us directly in this new world of content creators for the sake of value creation. We don't have sponsors, not yet, but if Mike from Liquid Death wants to call me, our sponsorships are wide open. Yeah, no, I think we've said this for a long time, that all this new technology, blockchain rails now coupled with these AI, generative AI tools that allow you to build and create more efficiently, anything you want, to go deploy an agent, to go use an AI to then build what you want. It becomes a pay-to-play game. And in that world, you're going to look for trusted humans who that you want to buy from, not sleazy salesmen, right? There's going to be sleazy sales agents that are trying to sell you something on Instagram. I don't want that. I want to know, that who I'm buying from, and that at least my agent trusts them at the end of the day.
Sure. I think it also it speaks to a changing trend, which is, like you said, if money is going to be transacted, disintermediates so much of that brand world, the traditional agency world, even the traditional influencer world, right? There's an economy at play where if you are someone who is, like, for example, my niece is an influencer who applies makeup looks and applies them online and shows how she does it. And she has a following, it's modest. And as a result of that, she was then proactively contacted by a cosmetics company. And there's a conversation that ends up happening that is completely outside of the network that the influence is being brokered through. Now just think about that for a second, right?
Yeah, it happens in email.
Boom. And so, or a phone call, or I saw you at an event and we just talked. And then a box shows up at your house and the box has cosmetics in it. Does YouTube and Google and Sundar Pichai and all the king's horses and all the king's men know about that relationship? No, they don't. And so here we introduce this new environment where the network actually is in real time, highly cognizant of all of the, call it UGC, because I want to separate that from influence. They're cognizant of the value of the user-generated content, and they're going to be the brokers of that value. Mr. Zuckerberg, are you going to be a bank? No, I told you I wasn't. Well, then what are you going to be? Well, I'm going to be a broker. I'm going to be a broker of value that goes to my creators, my audience, and to a peg to the dollar. But in no way, shape, or form will ever touch a bank, and no phones are ever going to ring in Sunnyvale, California, that are going to say like, oh, wait, who? Oh, right. You have to like go through us before you send a pair of Skechers shoes to Kim Kardashian for her to wear on her next video. It's suddenly now going to be, it's a holistic control grab. Remember, Facebook was the original walled garden. They even called it as such.
Right.
And then Apple, I think at one point said, no, we were the first walled garden. And there's like a big argument over who was more private and secure. Well, these guys, look, they're taking an old page out of an old magic book. They're telling you about how lean forward it is because we're going to be satisfying the hunger of the creator economy. These are not the influencer economy. These are the creator economy. We're going to call it very specific different words. But we're going to take a page out of my other friend, Mr. Tim Cook's walled garden playbook, which is, oh, no, it all happens in here. We just get 30% of every dollar, of every stable coin version of a dollar, right?
It is also interesting to call out that in both of these articles, now I'm reading from the block, but they specifically call out that the Meta suggests a host of popular wallet creators, including MetaMask, Phantom, and Binance. But it also says Meta will use Stripe as its payment provider because this is quoting here, because stablecoin payments involve digital assets, you may also receive crypto-related reporting directly from Stripe. We recommend keeping both your Meta payment history and your Stripe records for your tax filings. I mean, that is them saying, like, we're doing this on the up and up. We're not the bank. You guys have heard of Stripe. They're the payments guys, right? Well, now they're going to handle this side of both the crypto reporting and the USDC payout. And that is exactly right, that now that network itself can be and have awareness over how that money is flowing.
Let's not forget Stripe, for our listeners, works direct and Mastercard. And Visa and Mastercard had been in some amount of crosshairs over the last few years because of them being accused of de-dollarizing the American dollar because of using future Visa and future Mastercard dollars. So Mastercard and Visa are no dummies. They're going to align themselves with Stripe because Stripe is aligning themselves with Meta and all these stablecoin guys. And now that whole conversation is going out the window. And you're starting to see rise to the surface the same names of the same people getting involved, because Visa and Mastercard, look, they're not going to get cut out of this new creator economy. And if you want to take some money, do something and move stuff around, well, if Stripe is working with your stablecoin, you're garnering stablecoin values with Meta, and then also happens to work with Visa and Mastercard, of which you have at least one or two, well, suddenly your personal wealth network is now full circle, tied together. It's just that I think the key point here is that the same way Apple locks down the App Store and the way you can do in-app transactions, Facebook is locking down their creator economy. So you have to do in-network UGC transactions and not letting this go anymore to the boardrooms and to like the big deal brokers with the big brands and the agencies.
Well, it'll become agentic UGC, right? Where you could probably still broker those bigger influence deals outside, but it becomes faster, better, more efficient to just do it on chain, on platform, where all of the compliance and tax and payouts are automated for you. And not to be outdone, as we're sitting here talking about Meta and their USDC creator payouts via Stripe and blockchain payments, is Google Cloud partnering with another quiet player in Anchorage Digital, launching its banking and partners solutions here with Google Cloud. So the Anchorage Digital launches agentic banking and partners with Google Cloud to power the operating layer for AI and capital. So here's, this is Anchorage Digital, home to America's first federally regulated digital asset bank, announcing the launch of agentic banking. That's what they call themselves, to pair Google's AI infrastructure with Anchorage Digital's regulated financial rails to power both the emerging agentic economy and the next wave of institutional digital asset adoption. So maybe as Meta is going straight to the creators, here's Google Cloud saying we're going to go to the businesses and the value that gets created maybe inside of a Google Cloud environment, the docs that you create, the Google Sheets that you create, the files now could be stored on chain and traded and bought and sold as sort of templates or as data effectively. And I think also in this agentic world, as they're talking about like Google Cloud, if a Google Cloud AI agent needs to go out and do something for you, you're asking it to perform a specific task or run a specific algorithm against the data in this spreadsheet, That's where I could see the agentic payments via Anchorage Digital allowing institutions to fund and control AI agents operating on their behalf. I'm reading here again, the platform provides a regulated trust, governance, and settlement layer that allows institutions to fund and control AI agents.
Institutions control, that big C word.
Yeah, Google's Gemini models provide the advanced reasoning acquired to navigate complex commerce decisions. I mean, this is also where I think I want to bring it back. But as we've watched this convergence of AI and blockchain, the two are really reliant on one another. That in order to have the speed and the volume of transactions that you can keep track of, the microtransactions in terms of like social media content that's getting shared every second, every comment, every swipe, every tap. There's value being created. There's data being created and being shared. And at that volume, you need an AI to go make sense of all of it, find the nodes, find the patterns, understand the influence, understand the algorithm. I couldn't possibly make sense of all of it if I tried to scroll through my feed and understand who was paying who and was this a real ad or was this an influencer ad. But an AI agent absolutely could make sense of all that metadata in real time across hundreds of millions of transactions simultaneously.
Well, and especially considering that the guidance that they're giving to humans is, hey, you need to keep 2 sets of ledgers. You need to keep two records just in case for your taxes. It's like, really? Well, that sounds dumb. How about I get my agent to do it? It's almost sort of forcing the issue.
Right.
But yeah, this one is, and this one, it kind of also, it reminds me a little too, this may be a little bit of a jump, but when we were talking about the kind of crazy acquisition talk and how we're a little bit in it's like an old west duel. Like there's 2 cowboys out in the dusty street, and one cowboy is called GameStop and the other cowboy is called eBay. And it's this time where your people are throwing around terms and like, how is this going to be bought and sold? How are these things going to happen? And there's a stablecoin conversation, there's this value and these rails and payments and like all these things. And then without really giving any indication as to the how, these companies come out with these big values, we're going to acquire you. We'd like to make a bid to acquire you, probably with some amount of stablecoin, with some amount of cash, with some amount of whatever you need to do to kind of make the math work is, I think, how these guys are positioning it. And, I don't know if you recall, there was a time when a little AI company called Perplexity was making an outlandish bid to buy the Google Chrome browser. And I kind of had us scratching our head as like, okay, well, and it has that same kind of taste to it was the little guy making this insane bid for this big guy. But there are these moments in time where, I mean, it even harkens back to something we all lived through, which was the AOL Time Warner merger. Remember that, where that was, acquiring the old to bring the old back into back to the future. And in each of these cases, it's like the new saying, hey, eBay, we're GameStop. We own the collectible market. We own the meme stock category. We own and we know that most of your business on eBay is collectibles. So it makes total sense. Let's pull you into the future. The same way Perplexity wanted to pull the Chrome browser into the future and turn that into their version of the Atlas, which is what OpenAI did. Same way that AOL said, Time Warner, you just ran around with a bunch of nonsense content. We're going to put it on the internet. Of course, only the AOL example really did go through. I'm sure there's lots of people, lots of opinions about how that went. But our thesis on the show the last time when we talked about Perplexity and Chrome was, how much inside baseball is this really? To where the same way the 2 guys stand in the street with the guns pointing at each other, until someone actually pulls a gun and pulls a trigger, it just shows 2 macho people. And is it just to establish the value of the Cowboys? If GameSpot says that eBay is worth this many Bs because we say we want to buy it, maybe no one actually has to draw and pull the trigger because now both of us are extra macho. It just has this, rising tide makes all the boats lift vibe that feels like everyone's preparing for something that isn't obvious. And maybe they both are going to end up working together somehow as a result of the new valuation.
The only thing I'd say is reading this CNBC article from Andy Palmer this morning, the eBay rejects GameStop's $56 billion takeover bid, calling it, quote, neither credible nor attractive. key points here. Many analysts
Rude,
question the
by the way.
deal. Yeah, citing concerns about how GameStop would finance the transaction and the strategic rationale. So yeah, I think you're spot on. But
Finance it with stablecoins.
Right. I mean, that's where I was going to go. These guys, GameStop, these guys got plenty of Pokemon cards. They probably got some NFTs back in their hardware wallets. They can stack those up along, and we could probably get to the B. I think we got a little Ethereum dust still sitting around, right? Like, no doubt they were putting up collateral that publicly traded company or an entity like eBay would not entertain, would not see credible. And I think that may be part of this here in the narrative, is that at some point, and I don't think this is done yet, and I think it may even have something to do here with if Clarity App happens this week, and if Warsh gets in, and the markets boom, and we start to see all this, and all of a sudden GameStop's going to be like, oh, guys, you probably should have taken all that stuff we offered you, because it would have been worth $100 billion if you had taken the deal that when we offered you all the NFTs and the crypto and all the Pokemon cards and all the collectibles that we had that we were offering. You probably should have taken them, because it seems like that's the pump that we're headed into. And let's not forget, while Trump is over in China, they're going to be talking about money. They are going to be talking about AI. They're going to be talking about energy, all of these things that drive the economy. Right as we start to head into the 250th anniversary and birthday here of the United States of America, where it's supposed to be a big celebratory moment, right? We're painting the reflecting pool on the National Mall to really bring home this idea of patriotism and America as the shining symbol of hope and prosperity. Well, I'm thinking eBay might have just missed a good opportunity to sell to GameStop, or it's not over yet.
Or it's maybe not over yet, because let's not forget, the basket of all the little collectible figurines, statues, NFTs and like cards is one thing. But let's not forget that these guys are very proficient, like the way Robinhood is very proficient in generating value out of thin air and not doing it via traditional crypto or derivative technology routes. All they got to do is call up old Kitty, he posts some more videos, and maybe they can surge their actual, New York Stock Exchange listed stock, and then they can make a bid that is of a value that they can easily demonstrate. I mean, in some ways, to me, you have to first establish the value, or establish a value, and they just did, $65 billion. Then these guys are going to pass because they think it's ridiculous and unattractive. And then they're going to either fall on a little bit of a harder time, and GameStop will say, yeah, actually now, because of you guys refusing that first deal, well, it just came down to 55. And sure, now it's all stock, but our value is now supporting that. And if they keep bulking, it may come down to 45. I mean, it's sort of the inverse that happened with Elon Musk, which is acquiring Twitter, where he comes in and there's a certain thing. Okay, it needs to go higher. But what people forget is if you're dealing with someone who has an infinite amount of money, then the number doesn't matter. It's just a question of when, not if. And so if I'm thinking about the way GameStop is viewing the world, and literally eBay being one of the most antiquated businesses that still exists on the internet in its true form, like hashtag, no shade to Craigslist and these guys who used to like do just a message board UI janky. They weren't investing a ton of money in any kind of front end tech for so many years. We know the systems are antiquated. We know their databases are need to be upgraded. They know they need so much work. That's the promise of the new company acquiring the old. But I think that I'm on the same page with you. The more that they refuse the standoff in the street, the more they're like, we're going to have a little, we're going to go out and draw. We're going to see who flinches first. I kind of sort of feel like eBay's going to flinch first, because GameStop has weathered storms that are way bigger than this. And if they see their eyes on something, they're going to go get it.
Yeah, GameStop didn't immediately respond to requests for comment. So the financing letter released by eBay on Tuesday, which is not binding, stated that the expression of confidence assumes that the combined company maintains an investment-grade credit profile. It is interesting that their Moody's rating said last week that the proposed acquisition would be credit negative for eBay because of the substantial increase in leverage implied by the deal structure. So it's if GameStop is worth about $10 billion and eBay is worth about $40 billion or $50 billion, 56, then there's X that somehow GameStop needs to come up with, which might be a good signal for where the market's headed.
Yeah.
Probably tells you just roughly about how much higher we have to go.
Yeah, and tells you roughly what guys at GameStop see the same that we don't, the same way that what Zuckerberg sees in advance of the Clarity Act. I mean, these guys are in the inside and on the know. I mean, they this is happening. But to dial, maybe we should just dial back and jump into that China meeting just for 1 second. So we kind of opened with it, but then we might want to close with it because we're joking that it was the guest list of the rotunda, right? The guest list at the inauguration has basically been said, like, hey, you still have your tux? You didn't spill any of the clam chowder on it, did you? Good. We're gonna get ourselves over to see Xi Jinping here. And if you look, like you said, it's gonna be a talk about money. It's gonna be a talk about energy. It's gonna be a talk about technology. It's gonna be a talk about AI. It's going to, of course, talk about conflict, global conflict, including in Iran, who's the #1 oil distributor to China, which is an important thing since the Strait is closed and tensions are high. But what is not going to be talked about are stable coins. What is not going to be talked about are social networks and apps like, I don't know, TikTok and things that might be partially owned by Chinese agents. What we're not going to talk about are financial products in any sense of the word. So sorry, Mark Zuckerberg. Sorry, Andreessen Horowitz. Sorry, and go down the line. You're not invited. If you look at the invite list, it is very specifically old traditional banking. The United States is very specifically saying we're trotting in our most illustrious team, including Tesla, aka Elon Musk, Apple, aka Tim Cook, Larry Fink, aka BlackRock, Kelly Ortberg, aka Boeing. We're going to bring in Blackstone. We're going to bring in Citigroup. We're going to bring in Goldman Sachs, Mastercard, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But we're not really going to go all the way and kind of do this is not the new. This is, the current administration going to the old world, to a history that we can barely even understand, of thousands and thousands of years more than the U.S.'s paltry 250 that we're going to celebrate, and are bringing, our best suits and ties and not our best cargo shorts, Apple watches, and like Tommy Bahama jerseys. This is a very specific positioning. That's very interesting and different because, there's a lot that probably could be talked about, but we're going to table that for next time. I find it really interesting as to who the collection is, because it tells you exactly what the agenda is written for.
Yeah, and I think, I know I'm going to bounce back to another topic here, but I think it is also worth mentioning, as you point out, of, yes, that real world, like the biggest asset holders of physical assets, Apple, Tesla, BlackRock, plus the banking apparatus, the traditional banking apparatus. You're not hearing Anchorage Digital or Solana or Coinbase.
Or Kathy Ark Investments.
Right. They did not get invited. But at the same time, this is an article from Forbes. It's from Nina Bembasheva, the deputy editor money and markets at Forbes. This is an article talking specifically about the world's largest stock transfer agent moving into tokenization through its partnership with Securitize. So Securitize, known to millions of investors for employee stock plans and direct purchase programs, ComputerShare, you may have heard of them, will say it will support U.S. listed issuers that want to offer tokenized shares to their investors. This is Australia's ComputerShare, the financial service firm known as the transfer agent for the majority of S&P 500 companies, and they also facilitate direct stock purchases for millions of people, is moving into tokenization. So just as you're trotting out these traditional banking apparatus, just as you're going to go into this big negotiation, you're passing Clarity Act, you're putting a crypto-friendly Fed chair, and the biggest stock transfer agent is over there quietly tokenizing and offering tokenized securities to its customers. So if you're a publicly traded company and you want to tokenize your stock, or you're about to go public, and instead of listing it on the New York Stock Exchange or NASDAQ, you want to offer it as a token, I'm now seeing and hearing that you will be able to do that, which is exactly where we're going back to the policy piece of this. That's happening right now. despite this Clarity Act not being passed yet, the biggest companies in the world, the biggest stock transfer agent in the world, is now getting into tokenization. And so while that may not be part of the public narrative, no doubt is probably part of a private, quiet narrative. And you're starting to hear some rumblings around Taiwan. We'll see if we hear any rumblings around Hong Kong and some of we mentioned the Philippines and some of the other proving grounds there. But some of these things have just already been tested. They've already been put into the markets, right? The big credit card companies have already rolled out their tokenized incentives, their Bitcoin and Ethereum credit cards. So this is like the last piece of the puzzle. Again, we don't need to talk about it on a global stage, maybe because folks are lining their own pockets before it makes the big narrative, before the education breaks through to why this is a good thing. And I guess that's where you and I do try to find the optimism and the good parts of all of this, but it does create new capital formation opportunities. You want to start a business, you want to go start creating user-generated content, whereas before that wasn't viable. All these things that are going to now be possible in this new digital economy in the metaverse, this is what it's going to look like. On-chain, buying and selling of stocks, buying and selling of agents buying and selling services. There's new businesses, new trust scores that are going to get created around that of how to know whether my agent is buying this from the right source. And that entire economy, it's still 2026. We're less than 3 years into even knowing what AI is as a society. I can't wait to see what other economic value is going to start to be created.
Well, and then maybe we can parlay into one of our favorite topics of the summer. But the key things is that trust layer. And you didn't say it as a trust layer, but that's what we always come back to, that trust layer. And when it comes to what you just described with all of everything you just said, it comes back to me to 3 companies that we have not heard a lot about, who are in a position to either take advantage of Clarity Act or new rules or this swirl of changing legislation, or are going to be rendered completely irrelevant as a result of this. And those 3 are Experian, Equifax, and TransUnion, the 3 traditional companies, which, by the way, have all been hacked, I want to say multiple times in the last 10 years, who provide what has been this either a scarlet letter or a golden crown for Americans, which is your credit score. And they give you this number attached to your name, and that number that's somewhere between, say, 300 and 900 is going to tell you as an American citizen what you can or cannot do as it pertains to acquiring resources in the form of, most of the time, of a loan to purchase something or to invest in something. You want to start a new business, you want to buy a car, and everything in between. Those guys are the gatekeepers and they're the key masters all in one. But in what you just described, it gave me that hope, that optimism of, well, maybe we are no longer beholden to these horrible 3-digit number overlords who basically squash people's dreams left, right, and center. And God forbid you wreck your car and have to go get a new car. And then, oh, well, you're going to have another credit pull in 3 months. I mean, that's going to negatively affect your score. Are you sure you want to do that? And in all these sort of ways that the authoritarian hammer goes bang and smashes your piggy bank and just says, we'll take all of it. That's going to be a great reconciliation, I think. But part of the truth layer is there's going to need to be a very clear Clarity Act description of who are the arbiters of assigning that score, that particular value, that level of influence that you have with a creditor, right? These guys are brokers of influence just the same. It's just they're faceless and they're cold. Kind of feels like they're up for disruption. So I'm also wondering, haven't heard a lot from them in the news. Maybe they're hard at work. Or maybe they're just loading up on GameStop stock and praying for, a better future. Yeah, I kid, but it's a real question.
Yeah, I think that is one to watch. And I would think that the Coinbases of the world, the Krakens of the world, the Anchorage Digitals of the world, if they're partnering with Google, they're going to start to think, if you have that network, if you're in Meta, and it's on chain, then that becomes part of a equivalent of a social credit score, which does get to a pretty dystopian spot pretty quick. But I was
you
going
heard
to
it
get
here first. $2 bill. Meta gives you a score that's better than your FICA and better than your Experian and better than your whatever, because you within the creator network can get credit, but you could not go get it if you were dealing with your TransUnion bozo. Like that's that interesting closed loop, if you will, that Meta's going to have a hold of.
Final topic for the day, talking about closing loops here. War.gov unsealing a reporting system for UAP encounters, unidentified aerial projectiles, phenomena, whatever it is. The new UFO acronym there with unsealing the UAP encounters. This is, war.gov. You got to check out this site. It looks like a CIA report, all capital text, written directly from Donald Trump based on the tremendous interest shown. He's directing the Secretary of War to process and release government files related to alien and extraterrestrial life. This is crazy. It's a little early in May, but the timing kind of perfect. We're going to head to China. We're going to release the UAP files. Nobody's talking about Epstein, right, anymore? Okay, great. Check. Get Warsh in there. When we come back, we'll have all the answers about energy, and we'll close up this Iran thing hopefully pretty soon, hopefully just in time for the birthday, where everybody will be standing around looking at fireworks, talking about aliens. I mean, what are we going to see? I haven't dug in.
You just said it. I mean, to me, it's as humorously ironic and tragic as you described, because it's exactly what's happening. We talk about FUD, fear, uncertainty, and doubt. Sometimes you need to throw the shiny object over here to not make you look over here. It's classic, using sleight of hand. There's a lot of things that are happening right now that you just detailed that are really, really, really important, and a great way to make people not it or follow it is to give them what they want, the intrigue of the UAP. By the way, it's not a UFO, it's a UAP. And my favorite part of this doc, you guys, everyone has to go. My favorite part is they put the URL structure as war.gov/UFO, which is absurd because they don't use the term UFO anymore, supposedly. And then they created something that's called Pursue, because nothing is better than a TLA, a 3-letter acronym, unless you bundle it into a 5-letter acronym. So the word Pursue is PURSUE. Sorry, a 6-letter acronym, Presidential Unsealing and Reporting System for UAP Encounter. That's at a URL hosted at war.gov/UFO. So go, it's so confusing and ridiculous, but you got to go check it out. It legit reads like a Resident Evil dossier that you read before you, or a Call of Duty, you pick your first person shooter, but before you drop into the war zone in your video game, you read these kinds of reports and then you go in. It has been written for gamers, it seems like by gamers, and I feel like will provide a very large amount of distraction and confusion and delay as we roll into the summer, which is, I think, by design. It's a really fun website. We're talking lat longe markings. We're talking timestamps. I mean, it is beautifully classified dossier. It is perfect.
While you just said that, I was like, oh, when does the movie come out? But Disclosure Day, directed by Steven Spielberg, you may remember him from a movie called E.T. It comes out on June 12th, rated PG-13, so perfect for everybody to go see it just in time for summertime. So the next 6 to 8 weeks are going to be crazy. I say we're in the middle of these 2 May moons, from the micro blue moon May 1st to this May 30th, and everything happening this middle week of May, right in between, gives you an idea of which way it might go as we head into the next moon cycle at the end of May. Summer is coming, and I think it's going to get funky. We shall see.
Let's prepare for Steven Spielberg's newest swing at it, which will be called Close Encounters of the American Kind.
I love it. We will do it again next week, sir. We'll talk to you then.
See you then. Take care.
Peace.